The girl who walked into Grant Ashby's office on a Tuesday morning in November was 12 years old, wearing a coat 2 sizes too large and carrying a manila folder she held with both hands, the way someone carries something they can't afford to drop. Grant had been reviewing portfolios when his assistant, Claudette, knocked and opened the door a crack. "Your next interview is here," she said, and stepped aside. He expected a woman in her 30s, maybe 40s, someone with a resume and the tired confidence of a person who'd been out of work too long and really needed a yes. What he got was a child. She stepped into the room with her chin up, dark eyes taking in the city view behind his desk before settling on him. There was a scratch on the toe of her left sneaker. Her braid was slightly uneven, like she'd done it herself in a hurry. "Are you Mr. Ashby?" she asked. "I am," Grant said slowly. He set his pen down. "Can I help you?" "I hope so." She came to the chair across from his desk and sat down without being invited, placing the folder carefully in her lap. "My name is Tess. My mom had an accident last night and she's in the hospital. She couldn't be here. But she said the interview was really important, so I came instead." Grant looked at the door, then back at the girl. 12, maybe. Sharp eyes, holding herself still in the way kids do when they're trying to look older than they are. "Your mother applied for the project coordinator position?" he asked. "Yes, sir. She's been a draftsperson for 15 years. She has her portfolio." Tess set the folder on his desk with the deliberateness of someone delivering something fragile. "She said you should look at her work first before deciding anything." Grant reached across and opened it. The name at the top of the first page stopped him cold. Vera Colton. He read it twice, then a third time. The letters didn't change. Vera. He hadn't spoken that name out loud in over a decade. But it was there on the page in plain black ink, below a clean header, above a phone number and an address on the south side of the city. The portfolio itself was meticulous. Renderings, floor plans, elevation drawings, all done by hand and then scanned. The line work was precise and confident. He recognized her style immediately. The way she drafted curves, the way she labeled her work in small, careful letters that never ran together. "Mr. Ashby, are you okay?" He looked up. She was watching him with an expression too old for her face. The particular vigilance of a child who has learned to read adults the way other kids read weather. "How old are you?" he asked, though his chest had already started doing the math. 12, she said. 13 in March. 12 years and 9 months. Grant closed the folder. "Which hospital is your mother in?" "St. Ambrose on Wentworth." She tilted her head. "Do you know her? You looked like you knew her name." "I might," Grant said. He pressed the intercom. "Claudette, please reschedule my 2 o'clock. He took Tess to St. Ambrose in his car. She sat in the back seat with her hands folded in her lap and talked without being asked, the way children do when they feel the need to fill silence with useful information. 7th grade. She liked math and drawing. Her mother had been teaching her to read blueprints since she was 8. "She says if you understand how a building goes together," Tess said, "you understand how most things go together." Grant looked at her in the rearview mirror. The dark eyes, the small, precise hands. There was something in her jaw, in the line of her forehead that made his throat tighten. He made himself look at the road. She described what had happened the night before matter-of-factly, the way children describe hard things when they've had enough time to practice. Vera had been working a second job, cleaning offices 3 nights a week, and had passed out around 11 p.m. A coworker found her. Tess had been alone when the call came in. "I called her friend Mrs. Pacheco," Tess said. "She came to stay with me, and then this morning I remembered about the interview." She paused. "Mom needs this job, Mr. Ashby. The one she has doesn't have benefits. She's been trying to get back into real architecture for 2 years. Grant didn't answer. There was nothing he trusted himself to say. At the hospital, Tess walked ahead of him through the lobby with the efficiency of someone who already knew the floor plan. 3rd floor, East Wing. She'd memorized the room number from the whiteboard in the ER. Grant hung back when they reached room 318. Through the narrow window he could see the shape of a woman in the bed, the soft, steady line of a heart monitor, an IV line running into her arm. "Can I go in first?" Tess asked. "Of course," he said. He stood in the hallway for a long minute, Then he pushed the door open. She was thinner than he remembered. Her hair was shorter, the ends uneven like she'd cut it herself. There were shadows under her eyes that hadn't been there before, or maybe they had been near the end, when she'd started going quiet in ways he didn't know how to reach. But it was Vera, unmistakably, completely Vera. She was asleep. Tess had pulled her chair close and was holding her mother's hand with the quiet patience of a child who had done this before. Grant sat in the second chair and waited. A doctor came in, young, tired, badge reading Dr. Reeves, who looked at Grant with the polite wariness of someone trying to determine whether he was family or a complication. "I'm a close friend," Grant said, standing. "I'd like to know her condition." "She fainted due to a cardiac arrhythmia," the doctor said, consulting his tablet. "An irregular heartbeat, most likely triggered by severe exhaustion combined with low iron. Her hemoglobin is significantly below normal. She's been anemic for some time, possibly years." He glanced at Tess, then back. "She's stable, but she'll need observation and treatment, and she'll need significant rest after discharge. No heavy physical labor for at least 6 weeks." "Whatever she needs," Grant said, "I'll cover it." The doctor blinked. "She doesn't have insurance that covers." "I know, I'll cover it." After Dr. Reeves left, Tess looked at Grant steadily. "You really knew her," she said, "not a question." "Yes." "From before?" "From a long time ago." Tess considered this. Then she turned back to her mother and said quietly, "She never talks about before." Vera woke just before noon. Her eyes found Tess first, a visible exhale of relief, then traveled across the room and stopped. The recognition hit her face like something falling. Grant saw it, that half-second where the body remembers before the mind catches up. "Grant," she said, barely above a whisper. "I'm here," he said. "Don't try to sit up." Tess brought her mother water. Vera drank slowly, watching him over the rim of the cup with an expression he couldn't name. Not fear exactly, but something close to it. "Your daughter came to my office this morning," Grant said. "She brought your portfolio." Vera looked at Tess. Her eyes filled immediately. "Sweetheart, I told you to wait." "I know," Tess said, "but you said the interview was important." "I said it was important for me to go." "You couldn't go," Tess said simply, "so I went." Vera pressed her lips together, fighting something. Grant gave her a moment. "Your work is still exceptional," he said finally. "The rendering of the Maple Street Adaptive Reuse Project. I looked at it for a long time." "That was 3 years ago," she said. "Doesn't matter. The skill is still there." She turned her face toward the window. "Grant, you don't have to do this." "I know I don't have to." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Vera, Tess is 12. The monitors beeped softly. Somewhere in the hall, a cart rattled past. Vera closed her eyes. "She is," she said finally. "Is she mine?" Tess had gone very still in her chair. Children that age notice more than adults expect, and Tess had always, Vera would tell him later, noticed everything. Vera opened her eyes and looked at her daughter. Something passed between them, some private, wordless thing. Then she looked back at Grant. "Yes," she said. He had imagined, over the years, that if he ever knew for certain, he would feel rage, or grief, or some enormous, unmovable thing. What he actually felt was very quiet, like a door he hadn't known was closed, finally swinging open. "Why didn't you tell me?" Vera told him. Her words came out slowly, with the careful flatness of someone who has spent years not telling this story. She had been a junior draftsperson at Ashby Design 12 years ago, Grant's father Howard's firm, where Grant was then a junior partner. She and Grant had been together nearly a year. Then Howard had called her into his office one morning, while Grant was traveling on a project in Milwaukee. He had been cordial, almost kind. He had said she was a fine draftsperson. He had then said that his son needed to build the right relationships in this industry, and that what she and Grant had was a distraction neither the firm nor its future could afford. He had offered her money, enough to clear her student loans and start over somewhere else. She had said no. 2 days later she was let go, restructuring, the HR letter said. Her access badge stopped working on a Friday afternoon. Grant's jaw tightened. "And when you found out you were pregnant?" "I tried." She said it without bitterness, just the tired flatness of fact. "I called your cell phone 4 times. I went to the office and was turned away at the front desk. I wrote a letter. She paused. I found out later that your father had your calls rerouted during the Milwaukee project when you were working off the grid. I didn't know that at the time. And after a while I stopped. She looked at her hands. I told myself you knew, that you'd chosen not to respond. I was 26 and ashamed and angry, and after Tess came, survival stopped leaving room for much else. Grant sat back. Tess was watching him with those steady, gray-brown eyes. His eyes, he realized now that he was looking, the particular flat quality of them when she was thinking something through. Tess, he said. Yeah, she said carefully. I owe you about 12 years of explanation, and probably 12 years of a lot of other things. He stopped. I don't know exactly how to do this, but I'd like to try, if you'll let me. Tess was quiet for a long moment. Then, Mom always said my dad was someone who was good at building things. Grant felt something crack open behind his ribs. I hope she's right, he said. That afternoon, while Vera slept, Grant took Tess to the hospital cafeteria. She ordered soup and a grilled cheese and ate with the focused attention of someone who had learned not to waste food. Grant watched her and thought about all the mornings he hadn't been there for. She told him about her school, about her math teacher, Mr. Obi, who let her stay after class to work extra problems, about how she and her mother had moved 3 times in 4 years, chasing cheaper rent, and how Tess kept her library card from each neighborhood because books didn't charge moving fees. She had read, she told him, every architecture book in 2 different branch libraries. All of them? Grant asked. Most of them, she amended. Some were boring. He laughed. It surprised him, the ease of it, with her. Do you want to be an architect? He asked. She considered it seriously, stirring her soup. Maybe. Or a structural engineer. I like understanding why things don't fall down. She paused. Mom says the best buildings are the ones where you can't tell how hard they're working. Grant was quiet a moment. She used to say that when we were in school together, he said. Tess looked up at him. She talks about architecture like it has feelings. She always did, he said. He went to see his father the following morning. Howard Ashby was 78, retired to a house in Evanston he kept immaculate and chilly. He answered the door in a cardigan and reading glasses, wearing the expression of a man who had already prepared his defenses before the knock came. Grant walked past him into the living room without being invited. He did not raise his voice. He had decided on the drive over that he wouldn't, not because his father deserved the courtesy, but because Grant wanted to be the kind of man who could hold something this large without it making him small. He laid out what Vera had told him. Howard listened without interrupting, his face carefully neutral, which told Grant everything about how prepared he'd been for this conversation. You had a reason, Grant said when he finished. You always had a reason. I'm not here about the reasons. He stopped at the window overlooking the dead winter garden. I have a 12-year-old daughter I never knew. Vera spent 12 years raising her alone on 2 jobs, and she's in the hospital right now with a heart condition brought on by exhaustion. He turned. I'm not asking you to apologize. I'm telling you what happened, and I'm telling you I'm done pretending it didn't. Howard looked at his hands. I know what you thought. Grant picked up his coat. She's your granddaughter. If you ever decide that means something to you, the door won't be locked. He paused at the threshold. But I won't be holding it open. The weeks that followed had a shape Grant had not planned and would not have predicted. Vera was discharged after 5 days into a recovery that the doctor said would take 2 months. She was resistant to accepting help, as Grant had known she would be. She tried twice to write checks for the hospital bill that would have drained her savings to nothing, and twice Grant quietly intercepted them. This isn't charity, he told her the second time. I know what charity feels like, she said. It feels like what's right. It feels like 12 years late. She looked at him for a long moment, then she put the checkbook away. Tess adapted to the new arrangement with the pragmatic flexibility of a child who'd moved apartments enough times to know that new situations become normal faster than adults think. She did her homework at Grant's kitchen table in the evenings, occasionally asking him to check her geometry. He bought her a proper set of drafting tools, the good kind, with real weight to them, and she spent an entire Saturday measuring every room in the apartment with a tape measure she found in a kitchen drawer, then drawing the floor plans from memory. When she was done, she brought him the drawings. They were exact, not approximately exact, exact. "Tess," he said, looking at the paper. "What?" She studied his face. "Did I do something wrong?" "No," he said. "No, you didn't." The paternity test was a formality. They'd both known since the hospital what it would say. But when the results came back, Grant sat with them for a while at his kitchen table before filing them away. It was the kind of document that contained, in 2 lines of percentages, the weight of 12 missing years. He didn't let himself stay in that grief for long. There was too much present to pay attention to. On a Thursday morning in late January, Tess started at Kenwood Academy. She wore a new coat, dark green, properly fitted, and carried a backpack she'd been allowed to choose herself, a sturdy navy one with a small compass charm clipped to the zipper pull. Vera stood with Grant at the school entrance. Chicago cold had settled into everything, and Vera's cheeks were flushed from it, which made her look more like herself. Tess paused on the steps and looked back at them. "You okay?" Vera called. "Yeah," Tess said. She adjusted the strap of her backpack. Then, simply, not uncertainly, not with ceremony, but the way she said things when she'd decided they were accurate and accuracy mattered, she said, "Bye, Mom." "Bye, Dad." She turned and walked through the door. Vera stood very still beside Grant. He could feel her trembling, just slightly, and he wasn't certain if it was the cold. "She's going to be fine," he said. "I know," Vera said. They stood there a moment longer, watching the door where Tess had disappeared. Then Vera reached over and took his hand, not dramatically, not with ceremony, just the way you take the hand of someone you've finally stopped bracing against. He held on.